Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the, what date is this? November 7th, 2025 meeting of the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission. I'm John Larry, the Commission Chair. Commissioners and others, welcome. Guests, welcome. Photographers, apparently welcome. We'll start off. Happy to introduce and have him self-introduce a bit, a new member. And I will learn to pronounce your name if you say it 3 times, but why don't you introduce yourself and explain sort of, so Anne Arundel County, Arjan asked to be relieved of duty because of schedule conflicts. It's unfortunate in a way because Arjan has been an incredible contributing member of the commission, but this gentleman, whose name he will pronounce in a moment, is touted by the county as a great transit advocate and a welcome addition. So please, why don't you just introduce yourself and just say a few words.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Shub. I guess now I'm the representative for
Your last name?
Oh, Agnihotri.
Thank you.
Shub Agnihotri. And so I go to the University of Maryland College Park. I'm an electrical engineering major sophomore. And when Arjan stepped down, he and Sam Sneed, the head of the Office of Transportation for Anne Arundel County, asked me to step in his place. And I've been going to like public meetings, and I was also a member of the MTA Youth Transit Council before this.
Awesome.
Very excited.
Great. Well, welcome. We look forward to putting you to work, and thank you for averaging down the age a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I was getting ready to say that.
But thanks.
Let's do the
and
meeting
welcome.
real quick.
Yeah.
We actually have, we've got some other members to manage. Perhaps most prominently, Lester Davis, who was a member of this commission from its outset as an appointee from Baltimore for the business community, has, no surprise to anyone here, now become the governor's new chief of staff, which is exciting for Lester. And some other changes, as I think people know, in the governor's office, which we congratulate everybody about, and we'll be replacing Lester in due course, hopefully as quickly as possible on the commission. But it is really not because Lester was on this commission, because he has credibility on these issues for all sorts of other reasons. But I think having Lester in the governor's office, knowing his history with and commitment to transit and the Baltimore region is only a good thing. I know that Lester has a million things now to balance, and they don't expect him to necessarily give us everything that we want. But I think he will be a very sympathetic and empathetic ear, and looking forward. I've sent him a congratulatory note and look forward to talking with him. I think we're scheduled to talk about, making sure that he knows kind of where we are and what's going on. So we'll also be replacing him. I also wanted to just say briefly at the outset, this is really a very important, I feel like we're a bit of a waypoint in some respects. We have, we're in the middle of CTP. We've just approved the regional transit plan. CNI came out before that. Be More Bus and Mark Growth and Transformation Plan is out and around. You have, and we'll talk about each of these things, some of them in more detail. We've also got the HB 517 work group going on, which is an agenda item later. So there's a lot happening, and I just want to say how appreciative I am of the work of this commission and the commissioners, and how much I appreciate all the work that you're all doing individually and collectively at these meetings. This is sort of the end of the second year of this commission's existence. And, I don't know that anybody knew exactly what to expect from the commission. I mean, how could you really? So together we've kind of charted our path along with partners at MTA and MDOT and other places in the state. And, I just want you to hear, because maybe I'm out there, talking to folks more than, at least in the commission role, more than others on the commission, how much people value the work that this commission has been doing. We've been working through questions about sort of what our role is and what our authority is and what's the balance between advocacy and accountability. And I think we've done a really good job of balancing all of that and making the most of the statutory authority and requirements that we've been given. It wouldn't have happened without the cooperation of the administrator and her team and folks at MDOT. Joe McAndrews here sitting in for secretary today. And, you know, at HB 517, there was a question about structure, which we'll get to in a bit. But, you know, I said in my comments that the structure is one thing, but it always works better when people want to work together and when the right people are sort of engaged. And I think we've had a couple of years of success because of that. So I really appreciate everybody. And there's a lot of credit to go around. I mean, I don't see the others like Transit Choices and CMTA here yet. I see Anna coming in, a stalwart transit advocate, but there is something in the water. There's something going on here in Maryland that despite our budget challenges, which we're all well aware of, people are really coalescing around the need to do a better job on transit in the state, and particularly in the Baltimore metro region. And I really do think that this commission has had a material impact on that. So I just want to, and I've heard that from people. So I just want to thank you, and I want to convey that to you and for the foundation that we've laid. I also want to thank, I don't know, this is sort of the last meeting of the year, so I'm feeling very sort of, you know, end of the year valedictory sort of thing. But I want to thank Don and the staff as well. You know, we obviously wouldn't be able to do this without Don's leadership, Mike Kelly and Jake and Ashley and Todd pitching in from time to time. So it's really been very gratifying. And obviously there are always frustrations. It's a frustrating time in a lot of ways, but I feel like we're really coming together around some sort of future here. We know the things we need to do, and we'll talk about those as well. But I just wanted to express my gratitude to everybody and thank you as we head into the holiday season. So appreciate it. Appreciate you all very much. Okay, I think we will now move to the administrator's remarks and ask Holly Arnold to come up, please. Sure. Don, did I miss anything administrative at the outset that you wanted to cover?
No.
All right, thanks, and good morning, everyone. Great to see everyone here, and congratulations to Travis. It's great to see you in this role. I know we've had the opportunity to work together in the YTC and other stuff, so I look forward to working on the BRTC as well. Just some really quick updates today and kind of what we've done since the last meeting. I did want to provide an update on the MTA cyber incident. I've learned way more about cybersecurity than I ever wished to over the past few months. We are continuing to work towards full recovery from that. I do want to note we didn't have any interruptions to core service with the exception of the real-time tracking, which we are still working to resolve. Depends on the day. We're between 60 and 70% with real-time availability, and that is one of our main goals to get that back up and running. On the mobility side, where that first week we did have the most interruptions, I'm really proud of the work that the team has done there to stand back up a brand new mobility call center within 5 days. So we do have the call center online. Our wait times are averaging 1 to 2 minutes, so we're kind of back to where we were previously. Our certification office is reopened. We've been able to process certifications. Anyone whose certification did expire during that time, we allowed them to extend and are now allowing them to come in and get recertified. Online booking is now operational as well. The app is something that we are still working on. I know a lot of our riders really use and like and want the app back, and it's a little bit more complicated, but we are working for that. We're also working on the robocalls that we previously were able to make. So if you were a mobility rider and waiting for your vehicle, we would typically have a robocall when we were 5 minutes out, say, hey, we're 5 minutes out, get ready. Unfortunately, we've been unable to fully restore that yet, but we are working towards that because we do know it's a benefit to our riders. Our on-time performance is still not where we need it to be, so we're working diligently to get that back as well. Some of the settings that we had in our scheduling software were in the software that was taken offline, and so we had to restore that so that we could get those settings back. So we're working towards that. We do have a public dashboard to share our updates as well, focused really on the public facing piece of it. And we are continuing to document kind of everything that we're doing so that we can harden the system going forward. So if, God forbid, anything ever happened again, we'll be able to cover more quickly.
How does I don't know how it works. Does you guys have cyber insurance, or is it something that is internally funded?
The state does have cyber insurance, and we are working with the state treasurer's office. I think that will be an ongoing effort as we, we're still incurring costs associated with that. But we are Any questions on cyber?
Well, no, but good work and sorry and doing the best you can, obviously.
I will say, yeah, two-factor authentication is a really good thing, so encourage everyone to do that on all your accounts. Double check and all your passwords and all those fun
Have you
things.
gotten,
Some of the things that we've learned.
how have the riders responded? Are they, I mean, are they upset? I mean, they're upset, but are they upset with you? Do they appreciate what MTA is doing? I think, because I feel like you've been very communicative about this happened, we're doing these things, and hopefully under that circumstance, people will give you a little bit of grace. But I just wonder.
I think there's still a lot of frustration on the real time in particular.
Yeah.
Like it is one of those things that, before it existed, we didn't realize how great it was, and then it existed, and it really has integrated into people's daily lives, and not having that. I mean, I will tell you as a rider, again, it works like 60% of the time. So most of the time it works. The buses are generally out there and generally running like mostly on time. But it is kind of frustrating when you're looking to, go home, and I'm like, I think there's a bus in 6 minutes, so I'm gonna go stand out there. And again, I haven't had an issue where I've been stuck, but I know that other people have, and I know that's frustrating.
Is there anything you're doing, I mean, I hate to say this, but is there anything you're doing to remind people that when that happens, it is often the fault of that incident and not the fault of MTA sort of failing to, do
We
its job?
have, so again, it's on our website. We also have on the transit app, a notice, so
Banner or some
little
kind.
banner so you can see that. But again, I understand the frustration, right? Like the reality is we're still down, it impacts the riders, and so I get where they're coming from. I also see Mike has his hand up.
Mike,
McMillan.
no, I'm sorry, I was looking at the bottom right. Mike McMillan, please, sorry, and thank you.
Oh, yes. And even though, Administrator Arnold, there's not a deep impact to the service, but there is an internal impact, when it comes to those who have to get the work out. And, could you just tell them, speak on the challenges that the internal portions of it when it comes to the dispatchers, starters, even with management and, what they had to go through and still are going through while this is going on, because, it did deeply impact, the members that I have who are in those positions.
Yeah, no, I mean, the entire MTA team has really stepped up and done things in a way that they haven't previously or haven't for years, right? Like we've gone back to paper dispatching paper dispatching. And so, we haven't done that for a long time. So they're redoing those processes. Huge kudos to the team as well. Like we never missed a payroll. That was one of our goals, is to make sure that we were paying our employees, and we did, and we have, and that was the work of the entire team coming together there. So it really has been an entire agency effort to improve things. Okay, I want to also let folks know, if you haven't downloaded already, you can go ahead and pull up your phone right now. It's in both the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. It's the eAlert CSAY app. It is free. A lot of other transit agencies have it. So when you open it up, you can select the Maryland Transit Administration as your main one, unless you happen to live in DC and you want to select WMATA, but I would encourage you to do MTA. So it's a free app. We launched it October 6th. It basically allows riders kind of more discreetly to report things that they see happening on the bus or the train. I think sometimes it can be kind of intimidating if you need to pull out your phone and call the police if you see something happening, right? Like you don't want to make yourself a target. And so this allows for that. I've tested it out with our police, with the dispatch. We're really pleased with how it's been rolling out, and we're going to have more kind of social media and more advertising of it in the coming weeks. Since launch, we've had over 150 reports, and our police have been able to respond. A lot of them have been kind of customer service reports rather than police reports, but it's still good for us to get that data and have that information. We also celebrated in partnership with Baltimore City Department of Health and the mayor, our partnership to roll out naloxone 1 boxes at our metro stations. There's a lot of people who come through the stations and who may want to carry naloxone. And so we have, I think we celebrated at Penn North, I believe we have 4 boxes there in different places. They're purple, they're kind of bright. It's very cool, the technology. You open up the box, gives you a little video that shows you how to work it. You can take the naloxone with you, have it in your bag in case you want to use it at another time. And we've partnered with the City Department of Health and their peer agency. So they're responsible for stocking and maintaining them. We provide the power and we provide the police. So we're going to continue to roll that out throughout the rest of the metro stations. We're looking at light rail little bit more complicated since they're outside. Same thing with buses. The power source is something we have to figure out, but we do want to continue to be good partners, right? Like when things happen in the community, we feel those things and we want to be there for our community.
And I sent you a note because I thought I saw the coverage and it was great. But figured I'd wait till today to ask. So the power is because of the video?
Yeah.
And there are four, how many doses are there? There are 4 in each box?
There are 4 in each box. There's a little PPE kit in each box, and the city is responsible for kind of coming in and checking them, restocking them as needed.
So can someone just go over and literally open it like it's a mailbox and take one of these doses out? So do you have any sense of what the usage, because I wouldn't think 4 would last very long if people were really interested in taking them, and I'm kind of curious.
I mean, we rolled it up Monday, so I don't have
Yeah.
details yet. But again, City Health Department and their peer network is gonna be maintaining those, responsible. We do have 4 boxes at Penn North, so each station has several, so 16 that are there. And also, we're not the only source of this, right?
Yeah,
Like you can get the 1 boxes as well in libraries, in retail locations. We're just trying to be one more place where lots of people are going through. If you want to grab some and have it in your book bag.
And is this an off-the-shelf third-party product that someone located that you can just, basically someone is buying and installing, or is it designed for this purpose?
This is, again, it's a City Health Department
I just wonder if
effort.
you know.
I don't know, yeah, so it's their effort. They said, can we do it? And we said, absolutely, let's be
Great,
good
okay.
partners here.
Good, thanks. Other questions on this, Rob? Thanks, okay.
I do also want to note, we are, some of our employees have asked to be trained, so we're working with nonprofits to have the opportunity, if employees want to be trained, to carry so that they can do that on site as well. This feels like it was forever ago, but we did, since the last time we met, we did celebrate World Car Free Day. Monday, September 22nd, we did free rides on all of our services. We are also working to support the federal workforce. So Governor Moore announced free transit on MARC and commuter bus for federal employees who are still kind of going into the office. So as they show their badge on MARC and commuter bus, they're able to get that free service there. So we're trying to, again, we're part of the community. We want to support the community as best we can. Don't say that. I think we're getting to the end of my slides and getting into budget. But I did also want to note, it didn't make it into the slides since we just launched it yesterday, but we are doing merch again for the holidays. We have 3 different designs that we launched yesterday. So the website is mdtransitmerch.com. And you can get a MARC flavored shirt, or the core bus system map, or just a kind of generic holiday shirt. So throwing that out there. Okay, bus rodeo, we celebrated the MTA bus rodeo the 25th of October. So lots of folks kind of came out to celebrate. We had 18 bus operators compete and 5 maintenance teams. It is the most maintenance teams that we've ever had. So it's really exciting to see folks putting themselves out there and kind of the camaraderie that goes with that. I want to shout out the winners. We had a new operator win of Sherelle from Kirk Bus Division, and our maintenance team was also a new maintenance team, and I forget the name of the team. They always come up with fun punny names, but they will be competing in the International APTA Bus Rodeo in Salt Lake City in May. So we'll be supporting them through that. And that is the end of my slides. Any other questions, anything I didn't cover? Before I turn it over to Kate to talk budget.
Thanks.
All right,
Thank you,
Kate.
Molly.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Kate Sylvester, Deputy Administrator with MTA. Going to share a sort of closeout of our FY25 budget for awareness. We've talked about a lot of these things before, but we did just want to share with you where we ended the year. Starting with ridership, our ridership was up almost 11% in fiscal 25 compared to the previous year. We're continuing to see strong ridership growth across the modes. Obviously, the federal government shutdown is impacting the trend we were seeing on MARC and commuter bus, but we expect that that will come to an end soon. We all hope, I think. So good progress there. On our operating budget, we are very close to our operating budget plan. We're within 0.2% of our operating budget or our actual expenditures in FY25. You can see the numbers there. We do track that very closely throughout the year and have strong budget performance there. On the capital side, we closed FY25 with $760 million expended. That's 97% of our allocated final CTP budget. So significant improvement from years prior. 279 million of that is Purple Line specific, with the remainder across all of MTA's modes. I'll show a little bit more detail on that on the next slide. The chart here is showing in yellow our FY24 monthly expenditures compared to in red our FY25. So just sort of how we track through the year. Not always the same, but gives us a good indication of how we're tracking. This slide breaks down our capital expenditures on Baltimore core modes over the last several years, and then also looks ahead to what we have programmed in the CTP. So my numbers are covered up on the screen here, but you can see there on the right-hand side of the screen, the expenditures by mode. That tracks with the previous discussions we've had about what's programmed in the CTP. Just gives you sort of a sense of where the dollars are going. And you do see the significant growth coming in future years on the light rail. That's the light rail modernization program really playing a very large role in the MTA capital budget. So I mentioned that the capital budget performance is an improvement over previous years. This has been a big focus for us, making sure that all the dollars that are allocated to MTA, we are investing in the system and expending, showing that we know that we have those needs, that we're able to deploy the resources and make good use of them. So here you see the growth in our expenditures on the capital budget over the last several years. In FY25, our SGR and enhancement expenditure, so that's taking our budget and pulling out the LOTS program, Purple Line, Red Line, and SMRT, everything else was $428.9 million. That's a $90 million increase from FY24, so significant growth, again, in deploying those resources for the needs of the core system. There are a number of things driving that. We're making a number of changes internally to how we're managing budgets and making sure we're able to do that. We also did have sort of some of the catch up of vehicle deliveries that were delayed due to supply chain issues during COVID. We caught up on mobility vehicles in particular last year, which was awesome. We were waiting a long time for those vehicles to come in. So that's part of the budget performance in FY25. And the Metro rail cars also made a lot of progress and payments towards that program in FY25. So just a little bit, our capital budget goes to honestly hundreds of different projects, but just to identify a couple of highlights of what is all this money going to, what are we getting for it. In FY25, we put 150 new mobility vehicles in service, as well as 67 core buses. And we also are in production for our next year of buses and mobility vehicles, so we make some payments towards those as they get into production. On the Metro railcar side, we have assembly continuing. I just got a note, our 78th vehicle is now in Hagerstown at the manufacturing facility there. The team completed field work for our advanced train control system last year. We installed new maintenance equipment in our Wabash maintenance facility to support the new vehicles, also replaced the roof on that facility, which was desperately needed. And for anyone who follows Metro service alerts or tries to ride the Metro on weekends, you would know we did a lot of railcar testing last year and had quite a few service impacts in order to get that work done. But we completed nearly all of the testing of the new vehicles in order to get them in service very soon. On the light rail side, we completed the long overdue midlife overhaul of our vehicles. And we've also bolstered the heavy maintenance activities, come up with some additional spare part strategies and things like that for our vehicles as we're facing challenges, keeping them in service over the next several years. That's paid off quite a bit. We're now much closer on a daily basis to 30 vehicles available for service, where a year or so ago, we were down around 20 and sometimes having to cut service in order to, well, because we didn't have enough vehicles. So the combination of completing the overhaul and getting some additional maintenance strategies rolled out has taken us out of that risk situation where right now we have enough vehicles to be running our daily service. We also regularly do track inspections. You know, and nightly there's folks out inspecting the condition of the tracks on Metro and light rail, and they'll identify various defects in the tracks. And those are rated on scales based on how they should be treated. And sometimes those result in slow zones. So if we have various defects in the tracks that we can't get to, we can still operate, but we can't operate at full speed. So in FY25, we were able to roll out enough maintenance through our maintenance away teams and small capital projects to eliminate all slow zones, both on Metro and on light rail. So our tracks are doing better. On the bus side, we installed 40 new bus shelters, which is outstanding. Getting those through the procurement process took longer than I would have liked. So to have them actually out on the street now is great. And we're gonna hope to be able to continue to install additional ones. And then we also constructed a new comfort station in White Market. This is a big layover point for some of our routes. And there was no place for operators to use the restroom. That's a problem for their quality of life, as well as for our service, because if they've got to run, you know, 3 blocks down or find some business that will let them use the restroom, it's hard for them to then start their next run on time. So we have this comfort station now to help solve that problem. And that'll be up and in service for their use very soon. We have to make the plumbing connection. On the red line, over $20 million invested last year to advance project development on that process. There's a large team working very closely with FTA to advance the NEPA process and do a lot of public engagement and technical work on that project as well. And then the last highlight here is on the design side, so things not necessarily that our riders and our community are seeing yet, but still important progress. The RAISE East-West Corridor Grant project proceeded all the way through the design process. We're hoping to have it out in market for our construction contractors very soon. We also advanced design on a number of smaller transit priority infrastructure improvements. So these are things like bus bulbs or queue jumps or bus stop improvements, some short sections of dedicated bus lanes. So we've been able to advance those projects, as well as our Mandamin Hub RAISE project. We've done some public engagement, and that project has a number of different components that are advancing through the design process. Little bit of a look ahead, or what we're working on in FY26. Our goal is to fully deliver the capital budget that's available to us once again. That will include getting the new Metro rail cars in service. So excited, so close. Light rail modernization program, RAISE East-West, and a large elevator rehab contract will all be in market, soliciting our contractors for those. We've made good progress on already getting 2 of the light rail modernization. No, I take that back. 3 of the light rail modernization contracts are in market today. We have a number of smaller light rail communications and power supply projects that will help us be ready for that large modernization program. You can imagine if we're going to install new signaling equipment and things like that, we want to make sure our power supply is reliable. So some of those enabling projects are happening now. And we're also advancing fare system projects. New fare equipment is in production and delivery now. Mentioned bus and mobility vehicles. We'll continue to get our annual deliveries of those on schedule. And then the last note here is the Mark Martin's storage project. This we just announced this. The construction contract was awarded, so we're in the startup phase now for the construction. But this expands the storage capacity we have at the Martin State facility. There's a station there and then a small facility. And that is key with the work that Amtrak's doing at Penn Station. we can't continue to maintain or store as many MARC trains there over the long term. So we need to find alternate location. So we have some of that coming at Mark Martin's, and that's part of our investment in the Frederick Douglass Tunnel and the sort of long-term ability to run more service on the Penn line. So that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
It was always a, I remember, maybe Holly or somebody can help me remember, but there was always an issue during game day at the stadium and the Ravens, power associated with the light rail. Is that one of these?
So I think what you might be talking about is how many trains we can
Right.
run at the exit. So the light rail modernization program will upgrade the power that we have in our light rail system in order to be able to run closer headways. That will help with that issue. So
Bigger sets, I think, too, right?
three-car trains is what we can run now. Three-car trains is what we'll be able to run
I
after.
thought you were running two sometimes because of the power issue. Maybe I was mistaken.
Not because of the power issue, because of vehicle availability.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
We are limited in being able to, how many three-car trains we can run in the same circuit. So we need to do the investment of the larger light rail modernization program, with the power, the traction power substation upgrades that we're doing in order to be able to run those greater volume of train service that you're talking about.
Questions? Thank you. First of all, thanks. I was pretty surprised by the significant growth in metro ridership, the 62% rate. Is that just due to availability of cars?
So there is growth in metro ridership, but part of what we observed was that we were using our fare gates to do our ridership counting, and they were not counting accurately. They were undercounting our ridership. So there was a methodology change that's in that growth that you're seeing there, where we're now doing manual counts, actual observations to count our ridership, and we think that's a more accurate representation.
And then not that I expect this information to be in your back pocket, but I see that, MARC ridership was also up, and I attribute that to the return to work by the administration. But we would just be curious to see FY19 to FY25 comparison, just so we could have an understanding about how well we're doing in getting ridership back.
Yeah, I don't know if Holly has those numbers. I know sometimes she has them in her head. I know that the Brunswick line on the MARC system exceeded FY19 ridership this year, which I was surprised to see. I think I don't think we're at that point on the Penn line, but Holly, maybe you can, or if you know.
Yeah, we can follow up and get that for you. We
Yeah.
get daily
Yeah,
reports.
just be
I mean, I
curious.
think before the shutdown, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, we were seeing 80-90%, some stations at or exceeding pre-pandemic levels. But it really just kind of depends on the station. And I will say Mondays and Fridays are still lighter, like the hybrid phenomenon still exists.
But sorry to jump in, because I had to give these talking points at Northeast Corridor Commission meeting recently, but on the weekends, actually at the Penn line, they're exceeding FY19 as well.
Really?
That's right, yeah. Thanks, Joe.
Wow. It's great to hear.
Could you, I have a couple questions, but one sort of more, just sort of makes me want to ask this for the benefit of the commission. Just talk for a minute about, you remind us sort of Raise East West Corridor, Raise Mondawmin, what that is, what it means, what impact it's going to have.
The Raise East West project is about a $50 million project. The Raise is the federal discretionary grant program. We have a $20 million federal discretionary grant. Baltimore City DOT is our partner in that project. They're contributing $10 million to the project. It is intended to be a shorter term approach to addressing the need to improve transit travel east-west across the city. So it includes dedicated bus lanes, bus stop improvements, pedestrian environment improvements, ADA upgrades. It passes West Baltimore MARC station, so it makes that connection to the MARC system along the CityLink blue and orange. Mondawmin Hub is a number of different components of that project. I think it's about a $30 million project, but don't quote me on that. There's a big emphasis on pedestrian access to the station. So we've done a number of workshops with community groups and stakeholders, property owners in that area about the pedestrian safety and pedestrian pathways to the station. Also the circulation around the surface level of the station. It's a major bus hub for us. There's a police substation, customer service sort of substation. There's a bunch of different activities happening there. And then it also includes some more sort of behind the scenes things like wayside energy storage in the metro station.
Could we maybe at the next meeting get sort of a more robust presentation on that with some slides and drawings and so on, just so people, because I think useful for people to just understand it and also to be able to be sort of ambassadors for it. And so, not today, I understand it wasn't today's agenda, but it makes me want to ask that. A couple other questions. I feel like, with the resources we have now, we're starting to do more stuff. And admittedly, you can't make changes overnight. But I just wonder, and you have really, I think, a very good comms operation and the sort of social media, all that stuff is very good. How much can we tell people to anticipate improvements without creating expectations that we might not be able to fulfill? Because it would be great to be able to say to people, and you've seen people do this for highway projects or other public works projects, often in a sort of, almost a wry way. Like we know, like, I'm not suggesting do this, but it's so like, we know this is a mess, but don't worry, we're working on it sort of project. And like, is there anything we can do to start to signal to the ridership that like, help is on the way for these things without, as I say, creating a situation where people are like, well, you told us it's on the way, where is it?
On the Metro Railcar side, we've put up some signs in the stations telling people about the Metro rail cars that are coming soon, and
Also a billboard on top of Shot Tower.
so some bigger signs also. Social media as
We
well.
just bought the billboard for the whole year, basically.
And that's been a big topic of conversation in the early stakeholder meetings we're having on light rail modernization, is what sort of marketing campaign could we do for various different audiences, letting them know about the improvements that are coming.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. And then my last sort of question, which is a broader, maybe a broader question, might require sort of a return visit, unless you want to say anything about it today, is it'd be very helpful to me to have some sort of like, management notes, if you will, on some of these numbers. I mean, like the slides, like the operating expenditures, some of them are like the gross number is actually relatively immaterial, but then there are deviations high and low that make up a gross net number that's relatively immaterial. So some of them are a little more material, either pluses or minuses. I just think it would be useful for us, not that I don't think we're here to sort of scrutinize them, but like, why are those deviations there? So,
Yeah.
and again, you don't have to do this now, but that for me, I asked that question about a lot of these slides. The numbers are good, but you're living this, you probably have internalized exactly why that is. And it makes sense to you, but for us, it's just, for me anyway, I want to speak for others. It's just sort of, variance numbers. And
Yeah.
so how do we get a little smarter about, things we should be thinking about? And I think of them as sort of like if we're a board, management notes, like here's the numbers and here's like why these numbers are what they are.
Yeah, point taken for sure. On the operating side, these are so close, like these variance numbers are really very small as a percentage. There's not a lot of story there. There's just fluctuation. But if we have more significant variance, I think there's probably a little bit more in terms of story.
The mark number's 10%. I mean, it's down, so, but isn't that right? Isn't that about 10%? 11%?
Yeah, so Mark was underspent last year. Partially, there was some staffing that they had planned to do for rail car conversions to bike cars. And that didn't move forward on the capital side, so therefore the staffing didn't happen on the operating side. We also, I think early on in the year, the mechanical team staffing wasn't happening there. So yeah, I mean, we're happy to do that. I think she also hasn't presented yet, so we can go through speak to it as well.
Sorry?
Like when we present on these, we also speak to them, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I think it'd be useful, you can just do it in writing, you can do it the next meeting, you can send it to us. But I just think, a little more context on these would be helpful to me to understand. And I agree with you that some of them are immaterial and the net is immaterial, but the net is made up, as I said, of some bigger pluses and bigger minuses.
Okay.
And so on. And then if you could just sort of think about that for other, the other slides here, and if necessary, we can talk about it offline. I just think, it would be helpful to contextualize some of these numbers for us, if I.
I have one other question. Speaking of billboards, I'm always fascinated by the rolling billboards, and I'm always curious how much money the
That's great.
makes on the buses when they're the money
Or
advertising.
advertising on buses, I don't know.
We can get that for you.
Just curious from a revenue side, 'cause we don't see a lot about revenue, we mostly, it's expenditures and you know, it's always a.
Yeah, we can, so we can get that and we'll definitely make sure in future presentations we present on the revenue, both the fair revenue and fair revenue. I don't have it off the top of my head, I apologize.
Yeah, thanks. Other questions for Kate or the administration? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. The next agenda item is the FY 26-31 draft CTP comment letter. The draft of this was sent to the commission in advance with an opportunity for comment. I don't think we've received any substantive comments, correct? No. And copies are here in your package. So I don't know that it really requires, I mean, if everybody has seen it and had a chance to comment and you like it, first of all, thank you for liking it. But also, you know, you've seen it, but I think because not everybody who's either watching or, you know, here today has seen it, I just want to talk in sort of broad terms without reading it, of course. What is the message we're trying to send here? So, and again, this will be, you know, backtracking a little for some, certainly for commission members, but the CTP tour has existed for a long time. MDOT really goes to every jurisdiction, as people know. People talk about their priorities. There are letters sent in advance. We've been added to that process. We are actually the first stop. We were the first stop in September. I lose track. This is September. And you know, very much appreciate that. I think it's an appropriate thing to do to have added us in that way. We have a somewhat different brief than the jurisdictions, because the jurisdiction letters tend to be, here's what worries me in my specific jurisdiction, which is totally reasonable. And you know, sometimes there's overlap, sometimes those things become broader, sometimes you know they're not just jurisdiction. But I think the idea of this letter was to talk from the BRTC perspective about, you know, what's important to us and to contextualize it with the work that we have been doing. So and I'm just going to basically, again, I'm doing this for folks who might be sort of listening, and the letter will certainly be available to you once it's issued. But I think the letter expresses gratitude for cooperation. I'm just paraphrasing, and some of you have it in front of you, and reminds everybody what we do. And then I think a lot of the framework for this letter, and you know, my own evolving thinking on this is about, you know, plans versus funding. And I think we also sent around to you Joe Nathanson, who some of you know is a policy analyst and transit advocate and other things, wrote a Daily Record column in which he reported on the presentation that Liz Gordon of MTA and I made to Transit Choices about the RTP. And I said in that meeting, and Joe then quoted it, and I think the editors decided it would be the headline of his column, which was, we have the plans, we need the money. And you know, I want to oversimplify this, but to some extent, that is the message, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there was a time when I don't think we had the plans. And I think I credit tremendously the administration, governor's office, MDOT, MTA. We have plans. We have a pathway. If we could just sort of feed the machine with the right amount of money, and you know, it oversimplifies it a bit, but you know, in some respects, that's sort of the fundamental truth. And so I've been trying, when I've been representing the commission and when I've been talking to people to advocate, to try and emphasize that, you know, you can pick on one thing or another. You can pick on, you know, would you like MTA to do this or that better or whatever? But I think we've all realized after 2 years of this that MTA is made up of talented professionals who are doing a very good job with the resources they have, and you know, dealing with all sorts of headwinds, whether it's COVID headwind or what did we just talk about? The cyber incident headwind, et cetera. So there's always room for improvement in any organization, fine. But the real issue here is when we hear the concerns about MTA, when we hear about you know, the school kids and service delivery. The reason that is happening is not because MTA doesn't know how to do its job. It's because MTA doesn't have the resources to do its job. And I think a lot of our obligation is to try and wave that flag as hard as we can. We were very successful, I think, not just we, but the ecosystem of advocacy was very successful in the last General Assembly in addressing state of good repair. And it's hard to argue that state of good repair was not the essential first step upon which to build everything. And you can just see what's happening. You can see how the money is starting to flow and things are happening, light rail modernization and so on. But these plans are just not gonna get us where we need to go unless we have the money for them. So, you know, I say that because it's a public forum. I want to make sure we keep saying it. I say it because I think for me, it's starting defining where the highest return on investment for our effort is, which is to try and advocate for more resources. I said at Transit Choices, and I'm going to say here again, because they're both public forums, this is not critical of the current administration, the governor's office, the legislature, MDOT. It's really the opposite. I'm thrilled that they were able to do last session what they did for state of good repair. So, you know, it's not, we're not complaining. I'm not complaining anyway, just saying we all know this has got to happen. And with all of the constraints that we have on all of our, you know, state budget and the like, we still have to find a way to try and do this. And the letter quotes Secretary Biddle's predecessor, Secretary Wiedefeld, who said publicly when they announced all of this, that the state of good repair investments are a down payment. And I think that's a really good way to look at it, but a down payment implies that the full bill is going to get paid at some point. And I know that everybody involved, governor's office, legislative leadership, the department administration all know that. And I'm not looking for them to prioritize us to the detriment of other priorities. But at the same time, we have got to figure out a way to keep this train on the tracks, if you will. So the letter, I think the letter tries to pursue that theme about what I call the plans versus funding gap in the letter. Reminds everybody, how calls out Be More Bus, which I think if you saw particularly the city's CTP session, which Director Macbeth was at, and just generally the coalescing around Be More Bus as perhaps the highest return on investment opportunity for us because so many riders are on it. And it is still, with the exception of the 5th Bus Division, which I'll come to in a moment, a relatively inexpensive way to increase our transit, versus fixed rail or tunnels and so on. So the letter talks about the importance of plans. It talks about some fundamental priorities, including the 5th Bus Division, the downtown transfer facility, which are considered by Be More Bus to be sort of the major, particularly the bus division, the major, sort of waypoint, if not impediment, to real growth in the bus fleet. We obviously talk about the Red Line and revisit the sad history of the Red Line under the prior administration and reiterate its importance. We remind everybody about the importance of state of good repair while reminding everybody that the tremendous investment has been made. And we also talk about the importance of light rail modernization. And then there are some more specific, questions, which I'm not going to get into in detail, but about capital funding and operating funding and contingency funds and so on. And then the letter does sort of end with once again, a focus on Be More Bus and the sense that, and I think we discussed this a little bit with the secretary when she was here and presented on the budget, that I think the question is, can't the CTP do something more with respect to Be More Bus? What can be done? And it's not about putting money in a budget that can't be spent, because I should have said earlier that MTA deserves an enormous amount of credit. Kate and her team and others deserve credit for getting that capital spending percentage up. You may remember that we had, we were defending, MTA was defending itself, and we were defending MTA against criticism from folks that they weren't spending enough of their capital budget. If you're not spending your money, why should we give you more? There were actually good reasons for it, but nonetheless, it was always a problem. And, you know, it was hard to defend. And now MTA is really fixing that. The number has gone up dramatically, and it takes a very significant issue off the table. But so we don't want money in the capital budget that we can't spend. That actually is counterproductive. But to the extent that the CTP can do better for, particularly on Be More Bus, which is now a very viable plan if we can figure out how to get it done. I think we and others are really starting to beat the drum for what can be done. So, and then, you know, some concluding language. So that's the gist of the letter, which I know the commissioners have seen. And, you know, I'm not asking for a vote. I don't think you need a vote. I'm going to send it, but that's the preview of it. It'll be out soon enough for public comment, posted on, you know, website and so on. But I just wanted to sort of walk through that because I think in many respects, the CTP process every year really crystallizes kind of what the big issues are. And I'm just hoping that people are kind of coalescing around that. So sorry for talking about it at length, but I particularly wanted folks who are not on the commission but might be watching or monitoring to understand what the thinking is. So with that, let me open it up for questions, observations, and thoughts about what I've said. Please.
So thank you for running this. I agree with the sentiment wholeheartedly. Would it be a good idea, or like, are we at liberty to like include some sort of like actual like funding proposal, like for like what are we suggesting like be the revenue stream for the MTA? I know that there's like the work group on the reorganization of the MTA, the HB 517. But as far as like getting specific dedicated funding for Maryland Transit Administration, should we be including in this letter something that we recommend? Like, for example, like this might not be the best idea, but like a 1 cent transit sales tax like was passed in I don't remember the name of the county, but the one that Charlotte's in. During the elections on Tuesday, they passed a 1 cent transit sales tax to fund transit in Charlotte. So like either doing that or, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the responsibility of the Secretary of Transportation is to like divvy up what is in the Transportation Trust Fund to each agency. And at least, you know, from my perspective in Anne Arundel County, they recently said, we're gonna widen I-97, and I couldn't roll my eyes further into the back of my head. Over like, you know, where are our priorities for like capital investments in moving Marylanders if that is getting funding and, you know, we're getting shortchanged on being able to do anything?
It's your first commission meeting, right? Fast learner. So, you know, I will talk about this in a moment in the context of the 517 work group, but the funding issue is obviously essential, right? And I think, you know, all of us have talked repeatedly in this commission and in other aspects of our life and advocacy about the need to deal with the funding issue. I don't think that, and there have been studies, as you probably know, about both governance and funding that have come from EMC and others over years. And then there was the Train Commission, which kind of met and then stopped meeting. And I don't know exactly what the story is there, but regardless, which was clearly about funding. So I think it is my own view is that it is somewhat beyond our scope to try and presume a particular funding source because it's so complicated and this commission is constituted based upon sort of regional, you know, regional stakeholders and so on. People may disagree, but I think it would be hard. I think that needs to happen at a broader level. And I also think it should in no way, pursuant to what I just said, stop us from saying there needs to be more funding, which is a little different from we think you should fund it in one of the following 3 ways. But I appreciate you raising it, and you know, people certainly we can talk about it, people have their views. I just, you know, having been a member of the Train Commission and understanding how complicated and how many different pushes and pulls and levers there are, I think it would be harder for a commission constituted as we are to sort of start recommending specific funding sources. My own view.
Sorry, and then as far as advocating for like a larger share of the Transportation Trust Fund, like, I mean, because if this letter is directed to Acting Secretary Biddle to say more of this pool of funding should be allocated to the MTA versus State Highway Administration and any other. Is that also?
It is, and I think implicitly it does that, but I think it may, could we do it more explicitly? We spent a lot of time sort of trying to figure out, how aggressive we want to be with respect to, is it a zero-sum game? Is it not a zero-sum game? Should there be more revenue in the CTP? Growing the pie versus dividing the pie. So I think those are all important questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Other questions or comments on the subject of the CTP or our message here?
So I think the message is good. The letter itself is good and fine. I know reading it gets a little wonky for me as a person. And I was wondering as I was reading it, how does this translate to someone who would be an advocate for, or not just an advocate, but the rider, since we talk about rider experience a lot. And it made me wonder whether there was any way we could dashboard what this letter says in simpler language so that people can understand what it is we're asking for, what it's gonna cost, what we're gonna get out of it, and how you'll know the difference. And because it sort of came to me because of Kate's presentation. We are starting to see and understand the benefits of investing in transit, in increased ridership, in increased reliability. And I think it may not necessarily be for the administration to read this, but for other people to understand why we're advocating for this. And maybe as a silent way of helping to build other voices for this.
It's a great idea. I guess my immediate thought would be that, and you'll hear about it later, we're about to begin drafting and delivering our annual report. So I think that's a really good place to try and boil down, here's a detailed view of the work of the commission for the year, but here's a boiled down view of what the work of the commission is, and that sort of top line summary. I think it's a really good idea. Maybe that's the place, and if not, we can maybe find a different way to do it.
Yeah.
But I think it's, there was some, it's interesting, Scott, there was some discussion with the staff particularly about, what altitudes, the kind of my phrase, what altitude the letter should be flying at, because you could, and I frankly pushed for something that was a little bit more in the weeds, because I thought, we're supposed to know what we're talking about, and we want to be, but I didn't want to write a superficial letter, but it's actually good feedback to hear that it's a live issue. We need to find a way to do both of those things. So it's really good.
To Scott's point, I'm always been sort of data driven, and my institution, we've created over the years an incredible amount of data because it tells stories. It tells stories, and it only tells stories, but it creates tremendous transparency. And we have institutionalized a culture where now the organization feeds on that data. They look at it, they understand it, it takes time. It would be really nice to have those in dashboards so that not only the employees can have it, but the public can have those dashboards that they look at to see these measurements that we see each week. It's not put them in Power BI, you can put them in all kind of places, but it's really nice to have. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously a constructive suggestion. Don, can you sort of think about this and then reach back out, Mike, Scott, anybody else, and just sort of see if we can figure out what we could do, of course with MTA as well, what we could do to sort of satisfy that direction. Sure. Thank you, Mike. Other questions? Joe?
Speaking on behalf of the department, we look forward to seeing the final copy of this letter. I think it's a great step forward and the partnership and collaboration. I think that the administration of the department has had with BRTC is growing, and our level of understanding of one's interest and opportunity is getting better by the day. I will say we appreciate the continued focus on prioritizing our core basic maintenance investments, because while we are making good progress, Rome isn't built in a day, and capital program funds don't show up on the streets, and the net results show up instantaneously. And so we're in kind of year 1.5 maybe. So we still have additional years of work, and I think if you just look to the south, it took WMATA six successive years, and I think you're starting to see that kind of back to good narrative really play out in the reliability of the service that they're able to provide. So just a little context there, but appreciate the focus, the support, and I know that we as a department will look forward to responding in kind of with some level of seriousness and line by line response.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Anybody else on this topic? Okay, so we'll get you final copies and we'll make sure it gets circulated, and thank you very much for that. One more item, which I still have to talk a lot, and then I'm hopeful not to talk that much for the remaining items, but and that is the 517 work group update. So I think everybody knows, but again, for the benefit of folks who are either catching up or who are joining us without quite the same background, there was a bill passed in the legislature in this last session, House Bill 517, HB 517. It created a work group, formally titled Work Group on the Reorganization of the Maryland Transit Administration. That's now launched. We've had, I think, 4 meetings thus far. The law requires an interim report at the end of this year in advance of the session. It requires a final report at the end of next year in advance of the 2027 session. It is chaired by Sam Sid, who works in Baltimore County, but has a long history in transportation issues, and is made up of legislators and by statute, the chair of this commission. Also, Mike Kelly is on it. I forget if he's on it because Sean, is he on it because his job, or was he? I don't remember if he was appointed. What the exact?
It was a MPO type.
Right there, right. So anyway, it's a fairly compact, but I think talented and group with different perspectives, and have had 4 meetings. Sean Winkler, who I just spoke, has been sort of the lead staff person on it, has been doing a lot of the organizing and drafting. And I know there are people here who have either tuned into it or who have been following it because it has a website and you can look at the materials, or who one way or another are keeping track of what's going on. And I'm not here to give sort of a whole, review of everything that's happened, but rather just kind of give you a quick sense of where things stand at the moment. Early on, I think a lot of information was presented by MTA and by others, union representatives and sort of all the folks with different perspectives on the question of, could we have an entity other than MTA do this? And I think it became fairly clear fairly quickly that right now there were too many implications of doing that. Changes that would have to happen, relationships with the federal government at a time when it's not that easy to relate to the federal government, and a variety of other things that I think caused everybody to come to the conclusion that a radical sort of let's take MTA out, do something completely different, new transit authority was probably not something that there was an appetite for right now. But nonetheless, the decision then pivoted to what other governance structures might work that would address the need and for more local input, for more regional focus, and for some more oversight over MTA. This commission was created. This commission originally, and I think folks have heard me say this, commission originally was the bill that created us was originally drafted to give us authority, or at least approval authority, over MTA's budget. As everybody knows, we don't have that approval authority because it was amended out of the bill, because I think it was viewed as maybe a step too far at the time. But people are trying to sort out what is the appropriate level of supervision? And you've heard everybody say that we are the only transit agency in the country that doesn't have any sort of real board, and we're a real board, but we're not a board in the sense that we have all the powers that you might expect a true board to have. So the discussion has been around, powers and governance and how would that work? The materials from the work group are all available online, but I'm gonna ask to make it easier. First of all, Don, let's make sure everybody has the link to the entire site. And then also let's send them specifically what I'm about to mention, which is the small slide deck on potential options that are being considered. With, at the last meeting, some options for some sort of statewide governance, some sort of a board that would have responsibility for MTA on a statewide basis. There was another option that was sort of a regional approach where the board would have responsibility for, we'll call them MTA core services. That's how people think of it. I think we all know what that is. And then some sort of separate entity responsible for commuter rail. People may recall that the bill that came out of the legislature started its life as a bill by Delegate Corman to actually remove MARC from MTA. It then morphed into let's study MTA, which was a good, sort of a step in this direction of studying things. And but nonetheless, there remains some interest in sort of, how MARC might operate and have some different oversight. So when you look at these slides, you'll see an option for a statewide multimodal board, basically all of MTA. You'll see an option for a core service board for the Baltimore Core Services, and a third option that introduces a core service board plus some other sort of governance structure or board for commuter rail. And that's where the discussion stands. I think there are implications of all of these, which, we probably but probably can't go into in detail today. But folks are trying to figure out what that interim report should look like. I think there is at least a notion that something could be ready to be presented in this legislative session. We're not required to do that. And we have the next year, but we are required to produce an interim report. And depending on how well these options can be analyzed and consensus might be built around one or more options, something might happen. But I'm certainly in no position to say that. I should say, to be transparent, that at the last meeting, if you watched it, there was clearly some momentum for regional rather than a statewide board. And folks, including myself and others from the Baltimore region, concerned about the region being, represented and having its own voice that might somehow be lost if we had a statewide board. There are counter arguments to that, and we're just going to have to keep working through it as the 517 work group finishes its work for the interim report and then ultimately the final report. So I'll keep you updated, but we've had, one thing that we said, Mike Kelly, who I think is maybe still online, I see his headshot there, presented at one of the prior meetings about all the studies on MTA or governance, transit governance. There are 3 or 4 of them at this point. The last one was the one that we had done for us last year. And I think one thing around which there was complete agreement is we don't need any more studies. We have the information that we need, and we just have to sort of figure out, in view of all the factors that are out there, what we want to actually do at this point. So that's my update with one other interesting sort of overarching point. We had a presentation from the American, I'm gonna get it wrong, what does AFTA actually stand for? American Public Transit Association. to give us kind of a, here are some different models around the country kind of presentation. It was very helpful. There was a slide deck in there as well when you want to see it. And APTA cited a big study and had 7 strategies for successful organizational transformation for public transportation. Number 3, governance and financing for public transportation are so closely interrelated, they must be addressed together. So I didn't say that. There was no Marylander at the table had to say that. APTA came to us in a discussion about these, they were asked, I think, to talk about governance models. And in the talk about governance models, they said, governance and financing really have to be talked about together. And I think a lot of us went, right, exactly. So, and separately, a number of us have raised the idea that we can't do governance and stop. We have governance will get you so far, sort of a necessary but not sufficient condition. And it will not get us where we need to go if we can't figure out a financing model, to your point, that makes sense. So I think there are a lot of us, certainly including me, who are pushing for us to figure out what makes sense here, and then to continue the work on addressing how we're gonna fund transportation, including transit in the state. And hopefully we will not lose momentum. We'll be able to reach some sort of conclusion. So anyway, again, my apologies for this long narratives for me, but I'm just trying to convey where we are, and I welcome anybody else. Joe is on the work group. I don't know, you're the secretary.
Secretary.
Right, the secretary is also on the work group. Of course, Holly has been there, and you're actually on the work group if it really matters, but certainly Holly's been at the table. Mike Kelly, as I mentioned, so folks should please feel free to comment if you wish to add anything.
My only observation is that it's a healthy dialogue that's happening at this juncture, and I think there's great work that's being done in the background. And I think there's, next conversation is on the 20th, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to see where it goes, and at the end of the day, this type of conversation, that type of conversation shows interest, builds awareness, education, and ultimately it builds support for kind of where this group is looking to go.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think it's been good dialogue. We're working on, some of the tensions that we've talked about and solutions to those, and that's kind of where we're coming at for the next meeting.
Yeah, we are, I think everybody's committed to making sure we have a net better result. There are always going to be trade-offs that have to get made, but I think we'll all know what a net better result is when we see it. We just need to keep working at it. Any other questions? Thoughts?
Can you clarify just the
Sure.
timeline for what that looks like? I know you mentioned
Yeah,
there's
sure.
an interim report, and then FY 27, you're hoping to have more of a
Well,
order conclusion of that?
I don't have the statute in front of me, but the work group has a charge to study potential reorganization of MTA. It has some other, sort of bits and pieces to it. And it says, there should be a final report at the end of 2026. And also there should be an interim report at the end of 2025. I think Sean Winkler is the expert on this, but I think the 26 one, I think the ultimate report is required to have recommendations for legislative action. There's language in there that specifically says, like, don't just tell us what you think, just tell us what you should introduce in order to effectuate whatever it is the work group is recommending. Is that correct, Sean?
In 2026, we are supposed to submit a actual legislative bill
Right.
to the powers that be on the topic.
In 2025, I think it simply says interim report. And, at the end of the day, there are legislators on the work group, and there's an entire Maryland legislature, which is free to introduce whatever legislation it wants. I mean, obviously, we just don't know whether anything will crystallize in a way that allows that to happen with the work group's endorsement. No one's going to preclude a Maryland legislator from introducing legislation at any time if they wish to do so. So I just don't think we know, and that's kind of the ultimate end date with, as Sean just said, legislation is the end of 2026.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sean, did you want to add anything? I mean, you're the,
No, it's excellent.
thank you. Okay.
I reserved the last comment.
I was just gonna say.
All right. I hope to stop talking. Don, would you please walk us through the materials on the draft annual report outline?
Yeah, we have 3 items here.
Yeah, start with that.
Yes. I'm gonna talk to you for a minute about the annual report that is due to the General Assembly and the Governor December 1st. I wanted to include any items, any concerns, any issues that come out of today's meeting in that. So what I thought we'd do is provide you with a kind of a detailed outline, and that's in your package. It looks like this, the 2-sider at the moment, chock full of details for what we've already done. This is quite a lot if you read through this outline. So my hope is that you can see this, think about this, give me some feedback on it, because in the next couple of weeks here, I'm going to be developing a version of the annual report, and I'll send that out to you all for final vote online prior to submitting on December 1st. So look for that in the next couple of weeks here. The outline itself talks about, as I envision it now, that the report will talk about the roster. We've had some changes throughout the year. Talk about background of the commission, some of the boilerplate stuff, role. We're going to talk about what we did in 2025, which is quite a long list. So we deepened our understanding and strengthened the commission's role. We developed some standing work groups. We did all of our statutorily required activities, like looking at the performance measures of the department for transit, looking at service change reports, doing the budget oversight. That's what this last letter was all about. Approved the regional transit plan, reviewed the capital needs inventory, the coordination of the locally operated transit systems, particularly under the auspices of the standing work group we have. The report I anticipate will also do some advocacy and research kind of along the lines that we started to talk about, Mike and Scott started to talk about. And I'd like to follow, I will follow you on those issues. Make some recommendations to the department and to the General Assembly and some general conclusions. So that's sort of the general outline. There's a little more detail than that, obviously, on page. Again, love to hear your thoughts on any of this. So look for a draft coming out in email box.
Any questions for Don at the moment, based on what you've either reviewed in advance or seeing now, or what he's outlined? Okay. If you just add a few conjunctions and stuff here, you pretty much.
Well, we did a lot up until this point. I just wanted to make sure that. So.
No, thank you. It's a good effort and well organized. We appreciate it.
Wanted to mention that the RTP is online. MTA has posted it. We're going to put a link on our web pages to it. Encourage anybody to take a look at it. Haven't looked at it recently. Looks very good. Great job.
Is there any, just anything you want to say? I mean, just check in with you.
Yeah, we appreciate the partnership on that. We took the version that you guys approved and made it look nicer with some graphics and whatnot. So it's same content, just now available online.
Looks great. they gave us, the MTA gave us the opportunity to do a little introductory letter. You see it, these typically have in the front a letter from the secretary, a letter from the administrator, so they've allowed us on behalf of the commission, I wrote, a little introduction explaining sort of the commission's perspective and trying to frame it. It's a good document. It does need to be read. Probably, it really is an update. You do have to pay attention to the 2020 RTP itself. It's not like a total replacement, but really, really useful. And I just want to thank Holly publicly for the work of the staff. Liz and Albert, I'll leave somebody off, but I think Liz and Albert in particular who really led the team engaging with us. And I think hopefully we made some helpful suggestions, and ultimately the result, reflects some positive changes from the commission.
Yeah, no,
But it
absolutely.
was very good. I mean, it's a lot of really good work and a very talented group.
Yeah. No, and I think the external feedback definitely helps make some numbers. We appreciate that.
And the last thing we got is Jake's gonna go over and talk a little bit about a new newsletter we're starting. Hopefully to provide you with some little better exposure.
Hello. Yeah, I'm very excited to be rolling out this newsletter. Staff's been kind of working on this, woodshedding it for, well, about since March, so about a half a year now. In any case, the basics about the newsletter is frequency is going to be on a monthly basis, unless there's something with our primary statutory requirements that takes up all the staff's time, in which case it would have to get pushed to the side for a month, but don't really anticipate that happening, so try to keep up on that monthly schedule. Launching next Monday, partially to be timed with this meeting to give it a little bit more publicity and let commissioners see it before we roll it out, but it will be arriving in the inboxes of hundreds of people coming Monday morning, which is pretty exciting. The overall goals of this are to really help raise the profile and share news about the BRTC. We've only been around for less than 2 years. Certainly people really in the transit community know about us, but maybe some other folks don't as much. To really share a lot of news from our regional transit providers. Certainly MTA gets a lot of press as the great service it provides the bulk of the public mobility in our region, but there's good stuff that's going on with the lots and what have you, and to kind of get some of that information out there. And really just to engage with community stakeholders across the Baltimore region. The legislation that created this commission, like the two broad goals are basically oversight and advocacy for transit in the Baltimore region. And there's a lot of advocacy that kind of goes on behind the scenes, and we've kind of seen some of that today, like the CTP letter, the legislative report that's going to be coming out. But also to kind of have advocacy that's more to a general public audience, and to kind of get these signals and get people more engaged with Baltimore Transit, to give those some opportunities, and even in the best cases, maybe build political coalitions of support. And accessibility is going to be completely valued in this and centered through it. So, making sure to use plain language, not trying to get into too much planner speak, as they say, and really thinking of the accessibility for the sight impaired community with alt text and high contrast. And we've also really worked very deeply with the BMC communications staff that's given us help, and they'll also kind of keep us, on top of those evolving accessibility things as they get better and evolve over time. Thought a lot about the target audiences that we're trying to reach with this. A big one is local and state elected officials. The mailing list that we got created has almost 300 of those. That'll be getting this on Monday already. BRTC commissioners, of course, are an important audience, much smaller than 300, of course. Some of the regional transportation professionals that we work with on a regular basis to give them just this monthly synopsis of what's going on in our region and the overall BRTC. Transit advocates, that's a big one. And we did have the pleasure of meeting with people from the Central Maryland Transit Alliance or Transportation Alliance and Transit Choices. And they kind of advised us and gave us some great ideas, but also there's just a lot of informal advocates, that are riders and just see the benefit, or even aren't riders, but see the benefit as far as relieving congestion, environmental benefits, equity, economic development, all that good stuff. And sending to a lot of the media that covers transit issues, which is mostly just all the basic regional outlets, but then kind of the specialized niche national ones like Mass Transit Magazine, Metro Magazine, Streets Blog, etc. And as much as possible, start trying to build an audience of the general public that kind of gets overlaps with the informal advocates, but yeah, looking to build our mailing list and get this in front of more and more people's inboxes. And now I'm just gonna go through some of the very basic content quick. You all do have in the materials, you got the 11 by 17 material is kind of the draft of what will be coming out on Monday. So definitely some basic introductory information. In this case, we're adding an introduction, like what is this newsletter, what we're trying to do. This will only be running in the first edition, but we thought it was very necessary to kind of have that at the front end. A little bit about the BRTC, which this probably will be shortened in future editions too. But in any case, it will always provide the web link as well as the public input page where people can provide the comments, with online comments being one of these statutory regulations of this organization. Commission news is going to be a big one, and a lot of these items are going to be redundant with what you see in the meeting, but it's to push this to a larger audience. You see, we don't have a standing room only over there, so get more people informed. And in this case, celebrating the CMRTP and the BRTC's participation with the series of meetings and the comments and the approval process, as well as just giving basic information of what the plan is, and then just kind of making easy access to get to the link for it. Legislative roundup. This is a great idea that came from the meeting we had with Transit Choices. So to give credit due, Robin at Transit Choices, thank you for this great idea. In this case, the thing we're covering is to introduce people to the work group that we were just speaking about, the HR 517 work group. And this too gives just kind of a basic overview of what it is, the models it's considering, the information on the meeting, and an easy link to get there. Transit provider news, referred to before to kind of get news out there about what our systems are doing. So in this case, Scott Fox from Baltimore City Transit was proactive and let us know about the expansion of the Charm City Circulator Green Line and kind of providing a link to that. I'll also be contacting all of our providers maybe 2-3 weeks before every edition and just ask if they have anything that would be that'd be great in this section. So yeah, we're hoping to have more news about our local providers in this. A really big one is then gathering together engagement opportunities for people every single month as we can find out. Just another thing that we'll try to be proactive with governments and providers to try to solicit and get them in the newsletter. In this case, we have 2 about surveys that are going on in Baltimore City with basically what these surveys are in just simple plain language, as well as then the link to go take the surveys. And also then the last item that we have on here, we think it's important when engagement results are out there, impact is out there, to kind of let people know what that is and where to find out more about it. Because, you know, there's so much engagement opportunities out there, but, you know, to have people find out what's coming out of it, what the results are, kind of encourages people to be more participatory in this stuff. So very important section in the newsletter. Transit Hub news. We've been doing something called this since February of when we first started this thing back in February 2024, where we'd have a PDF where we curated a handful of national stories and regional stories, and pretty much just for the audience and the commissioners, some BMC staff and a few transit advocates. But we're gonna keep it in a more slimmed down version in this new publication that we hope to see wider distribution of. And again, kind of a redundant with some of the things that we heard in the administrator's remarks here as far as the naloxone program and the new incentive program to reward transit riders. But yeah, just some other stories. One that's pretty good from the banner about the continuing school busing issue. And sometimes we'll throw in stuff from the larger DMV, like we are here about the funding by DMV moves. And then there's some other content that we're putting in here that's kind of more optional and evergreen, not quite as priority, but we think is important and kind of fun if space allows. One of them that we're gonna plan on running most months is Transit Benefit of the Month, where every month we go into a particular transit benefit, really make sure to stick with the plain language, try to give it some important takeaway stats, links, which in this case, the link goes to the study that proved these 60 times safer and 20 times safer for the respective transit modes. And yeah, a bunch of like pretty in-depth transit benefits that will cover a range of equity, economic development, health and safety, environmental benefits. And I love celebrating transit, so it's a great opportunity. And this is also kind of fun, more in the optional content for this month in transit history, where we try to find a couple of consequential events that happened in our area. In this case, 2 about streetcars, and then well, the end of the streetcars, boo, and then kind of the development of the metro system, and that both happened this month. And you know, it's kind of fun, and I love history and letting people know about the past, but then also it kind of like informs how consequential these decisions are and how they determine the future. But maybe 10 years ago, when a executive decision got made that we could be riding the light rail today otherwise. And we have a dedicated email address right here, and we're encouraging people to reach out from the general public. For one thing, just to be submitting any news items that would make for great content. In addition, people wanting to get added to the mailing list, although we also have a sign-up widget for people to go through with that. We're always open to fresh new content ideas. Like I said, we didn't think of some of them, like the legislative roundup that came from an external party. And just any questions people have about the newsletter in general. Easy to remember little email and a domain, and that will be at the bottom of every newsletter. And that's what I got to say about that. So if there's any questions, comments, what have you.
Nice job, Jake.
Yeah, thank you, Jake.
I have a question, just a quick question. This is great and would love to help you expand the reach of it. I know you said a sign up link. If there's a way to kind of give us a blurb in that link so that we can then send that out to our networks and our constituencies to encourage folks to.
Sure, and I mean, one thing, feel free to, forward the issue. I mean, commissioners will certainly be getting it. Because yeah, there is the widget that is on the BRTC at publicinput.com. And then the email address. The widget's probably the easiest way to do it, but yeah, I mean, let me know if you think about any other ways. We are hoping to work with partners and kind of build this audience and to get it out there a little bit more.
Jake, is it worth putting ask this like QR code at the end instead of, people tend to use those a lot more these days. I see them everybody looking, where's a QR code?
Okay, and I know our communications department definitely does work with some of that stuff with their promotional materials. So yeah, looking to expand that with them. And Don and I are having monthly meetings with our communication staff about kind of content and looking to expand the audience. So that will definitely be something I'll note and bring up for the future.
This is a bit more just like broad for like outreach. I think Holly, if you tell folks at the Youth Transit Council, if you're meeting with them in December about this, I think you can get probably a number of them to show up at the next meeting because they're all itching to like be providing input and they're really knowledgeable people. So.
No, I actually targeted them. I'd love to get this into some of their inboxes as well. And you're also going to be in commission news next month, just so you know, so I'll need a headshot in the city.
Okay.
Yeah, no, and especially if you have any cards with QR codes and something, I think that'd be easy to pass out at the YTC meeting.
Okay.
So yeah, would be happy to partner with you on that.
Definitely get going on that. All right, sounds good.
We need, I'm sorry, please.
I'll say along similar lines, it may be great if you can take portions of the newsletter and put it on social media. Because a lot of people, digest in very small snippets these days.
Okay. Cause I know it's definitely gonna be pushed up by our communication staff to the main ones that we have, but I like the idea of maybe dribbling out snippets.
Yeah.
And then you can tag, like, we can tag you, or you can tag us, like, at BCDOT. And if you just tag us, it'll end up right in our stream.
Okay.
And so like maybe, and I know just the short version is have your communications person talk to our communications person. And that probably would go well with every single person in here, is to have your communications team talk to our respective teams and just end up tagging all of us. And your reach will probably go from maybe like a couple hundred people to several thousand people in 5 clicks.
Okay, I will definitely follow up with that. If you have a particular contact, like I said, we did meet with Scott Fox early on. He was great to get some information out, but the greater communications team would be.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
I don't know what the protocol is on sending it to people who haven't quote signed up. But on the other hand, it's not like we're selling, pots and pans. So I guess what I mean is, it seems to me that there are lots of lists out there where we could just send stuff, with an unsubscribe option. But that most people who are interested in this will probably be reasonably happy to receive it. They're not going to view it as spam or harassment. So let's make sure we're doing it as broadly as possible in all the ways people have helpfully suggested. But I don't want to rely just on please sign up if you wish to receive these, because
It's a bit different, is building audience but not be annoying. But yeah, maybe having an active unsubscribe option a little bit easier, although most email accounts would have that.
Okay, well, thank you, Jake. Thanks for your work on this. Really good.
Thank you.
Don, you want to move on to the working updates, please?
Yeah, I think Marcus, if you want to talk about lots.
Yeah, thanks, John. The Lots work group met in October 20th, so you have a little briefing here. It says June 13th, 2025. I believe we did meet at that time as well. The most recent one was just a few weeks ago on the 20th. And you have a full outline of what we discussed there, but just to kind of recap, really appreciate Don and Jake for helping to facilitate the meeting, keeping us going and keeping us on track of what we've been doing. So the CTP was overviewed, the overview was provided by Don, and we talked about the allocations from the $220 million statewide lots program and what buckets were being put, how much money were being put in the buckets across Annapolis, Anne Arundel County, County, Baltimore City, and Howard. And some of those highlights were Annapolis. For us, we're expanding our electric bus fleet and the ferry operations. And in the county specifically, the prioritizing of the electrification with 6 new EV buses. Baltimore City investing in bus renewal and major ferry upgrades as well. In the Baltimore and Howard counties, we're focusing on the growth modernization, the workforce initiatives. So what we want to look at is really next steps. One of the things, we're going to try to meet sometime in early December, but we want to look at like a year in review and how do we really get our message out? What do we want to do? So we're trying to reflect on our group's progress and identify tangible outcomes from this year going into next year. And some of our accomplishments, what were they? How well did we think we did with advancing our initiatives? What did we find or identify as barriers that limited our growth, be it resource constraints, data gaps, et cetera. But ideas going forward, we really want to look at a proactive approach and engagement in the 2026 Maryland General Assembly sessions. So we can identify some hearings, some bills that are really related to transit, specifically lots funding. Participate in these legislative hearings and present testimony on written comments of what we believe that we come out of our BRTC here. And develop a unified lots position statement highlighting what we need, what MTA needs, what the lots need, and coordinate, with MTA government affairs and align ourselves to avoid duplication. But preparing like a white paper to really talk about our position. So again, I thank Don and Jake for helping to keep us on track and finding tangible ways to present what it is that we're actually working on. So thanks again, Don. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add into that.
We did have 2 meetings at the Lots Work Group. We did not meet as the rider experience in hopes that we were have a conversation about the school bus issue. We're still trying to arrange that. It took a while to align, I think.
Let me just, first of all, Marcus, thank you very much for your leadership. That's a really solid report, and I encourage everybody to take a look at the written version as well. Regarding rider experience, the main topic there, as Scott knows, is the question of school transportation. And everybody who needs to be there has agreed, but we just haven't gotten everybody with busy schedules to agree on a date. So we're gonna keep doing that, and we're gonna have a meeting as soon as we possibly can with people around the table to see if we can identify, any incremental things that can be done. I would submit that the long-term solution is more resources for MTA. But there may be some things in the short term that can be done with folks sitting around the table, and everybody was willing to do it. So we're just dealing with frankly, a logistical issue, which is not totally surprising in view of the schedules that people.
And I would just amend or add to that Baby Bird, has done a great job in getting lawmakers to understand the challenges the students face by taking them on rides, and that's something that's going to be in the next issue of the newsletter.
There was a great story, and was it in the banner? I'm sorry, I can't remember where I read it.
It's the banner article.
Right.
That's what, that Jake has the link to in the upcoming newsletter.
Yeah.
So you haven't seen it, you'll see it in a couple days.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
The last group is the project and program delivery group. They didn't meet since prior to September, since August, actually. The program came out and sucked the air out of the room. So they'll meet between now and before the final comes out.
just to connect a few threads here, I don't know, like I said, I don't know exactly what the outcome of the 517 work group is going to be, but included in, at least in by reference in some of the slides, are some of the things that we were talking about in the project of program delivery, including tort liability, including procurement, those kinds of things, which if we're looking at MTA's prerogatives and sort of structure, it would not be a bad time to try and make some improvements in those, rather than, instead of doing them in a one-off way, doing this as part of identifying other issues. So those are on the list. So we're not omitting, I mean, we're sort of approaching them from a different angle, but I just want the commission to know that those are still things that are priorities, and they are not only have they been discussed, but they are included in one way or another in the actual materials as part of the HB 517.
Mr. Chair, if we have nobody signed up for comment, public participation. I don't know if there's anybody online that
No, there isn't.
Okay. The last thing we do have on the agenda are, if passed is if 2025 is prologue to 2026, these are the dates, tentative dates for the commission meetings for following this 2-month schedule. So the dates below are bottom of the page. There are dates for next year.
You will, I mean, it's impossible to pick those dates by some consensus. They're the first, I assume the first, I'm looking at them, maybe
They match.
July probably is a July 4th problem.
Yeah, January is an outliner, and July is.
Well, I think you should just go ahead and, we can talk about it separately, but at some point we just get calendar items out for those dates.
Forewarned, it's we're on.
Do you want to consider pushing the January meeting until after the budget is published? I know that's typically a big topic of conversation and it will not be out by January 9th. We don't have to, I'm just throwing that out there.
No, that's, I meant to ask actually what the sync,
Yeah.
I mean, that would be fine with me.
It's out the next week, right?
Yeah.
So
If you want me to ask questions, I can't until
Yeah,
it
yeah.
comes out, so.
we can just sort that out and then
Yes.
we can. So look for a formal, I mean, you can note these dates, but you could change a bit, so look for formal Outlook calendar items or whatever format you're using to confirm it. Okay, does anybody have any other old business or new business they want to raise for the benefit of the commission? And there's nobody, right, I don't want to cut anybody off. All right, if not, thank you very much, and I'll take a motion to adjourn from member. Second? Second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Adjourn, thank you very much.